Some people love YETI coolers and some people don't, but suffice it to say, a lot of folks think that they hold ice the longest. So I decided to bring out 10 cheaper coolers head to head with the YETI Tundra 65, and we're gonna find out, can these cheaper coolers beat a YETI?
Gear up and get outside.
It is hot today. In my truck it said 108 degrees. On the news it said 104 at the airport here in Boise. We have a heat wave, so I thought this would be a good week to do a cooler test. This week I've got the classic YETI Tundra haul, but I'm gonna put it up against 10 other cheaper coolers. Now these cheaper coolers vary in price from about 60 bucks all the way up to about 250 bucks. So still not all cheap, but definitely a lot cheaper than that YETI Tundra 65, which cost $350 as of the time of filming. My test is pretty simple. I went to Costco and I bought 600 pounds of ice. Got a lot of funny looks, came home, and now I look like a sweaty dog because I'm all wet from ice and sweat because it's freaking hot outside. I brought all these coolers into my garage earlier. I cannot pre-chill them. That is not practical. For folks out there that might say, oh, well, you didn't pre-chill the coolers, or the ice might be different temperatures the way you put it in the truck. Guys, I'm just a dude with a truck and some coolers. I don't have a refrigeration truck. I don't have a commercial fridge. I'm not doing some kind of lab test. I'm just a dude with a bunch of coolers trying to see which one holds ice the longest. So this is what I'm gonna do. I brought these all in here. I put these little Bluetooth thermometers on the lid of each. That's gonna allow me to track the temperature changes over the entire test. I filled these coolers up almost to the brim on ice, as much as I could while still being able to close the lid. I did my best to make it even Steven. The smallest cooler I've got here is a Cordova 48 quart. The largest is a couple of 70 quarts from Coleman and Igloo. So I do expect to see some variation between the smaller and larger coolers, but we'll just find out how that really plays out. But now that I got them all kind of on the same playing field, all loaded up with ice, I'm gonna close these lids so they can really start to cool down, and I'm gonna put them in my backyard. Okay folks, there we have it. All of our coolers are lined up in a row. This is mostly shaded, actually is shaded pretty much all day. That direction is south, so that fence kind of shades the sun. Get a little bit of filtered sunlight. Sticking out crooked like that, I might get a little bit of sun on the edges. Suffice it to say, I did my best to place them so they are all treated equally by the sunshine and shade. It has been over 24 hours now since I put these coolers out here, and I'm gonna do my little tests and checks here. First off, there's a million ways you could do this. This is just the way I do it. A total possible of 4 points per day. 1 point is just, is there ice present? So when I open up a cooler, there's ice present, that's 1 point. Second point is, if the soda cans are still sitting on top of the ice, it gets a point. If it doesn't, it's 0. The third one is, what's the temperature of that hot dog? So I use this little pin thermometer, stick it in the hot dog, and I read that. Now, food safe temperature is 40 degrees for meat and things, according to the FDA. So that's what I use. If it's at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below, it gets the point. If not, it does not. And the last one is, and this is pretty arbitrary, but I gotta have some mechanism to do it. I just take this little infrared thermometer, I shoot it at the center of the top of that lid, and I'm looking for a temperature of 50 degrees or lower. Right now that one said 59, so it gets 0 points. It would get 1 point if it had it. I'm doing this one a little bit more detailed than I have in the past too, because I've got these thermometers in here, and that's gonna allow me to, well, hi Gertie. Sorry, did I not say hello you do, Gertie? This is Gertie, Gertrude. She's our old English sheepdog. She got a short summer haircut. Go on now, let me do my video. That thermometer hanging out in there is going to allow us to kind of look at the end and just see how that trend was and which coolers got the hottest and which ones stayed the coolest. So I'm gonna run down through all of these coolers and I'm gonna take my 4 observations and see how it goes. 4 points. That one there was at 45 degrees inside. This one is a rotomolded cooler. That usually helps. That first one just has a thinner lid. Not too surprised. We're having kind of record high temperatures right now today here in Boise. It was 111 degrees according to the thermometer on my truck today. The weatherman's saying it was around 106, 107 I think, or maybe it was actually, no, it was supposed to hit 108. Anyway, it's hot and it's supposed to be over 100 every day for the entire time we have these out here. The nighttime lows are right around 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I'm gonna introduce each one to you and tell you what they are and how much they cost. We're also going to take a peek inside so you can see where they're all at. This first one is the Coleman 316 series. This is their 70 quart version. And there's a look at the ice after 24 hours. The list price is about 85 bucks, but you can find them for around 60 bucks at Walmart and other places. This white one here is the Igloo Latitude Marine series cooler, I think. Also a 70 quart cooler. That's what it looks like today after 24 hours. You can see that level has come down quite a bit. There's a fair amount of water in the bottom, and I'm not draining any of the water out of these coolers during this test. All the drain plugs are tight. That one also lists for about the same price as that Coleman. I think it's 90 bucks. I got it for less at Walmart. Speaking of Walmart, this is the Ozark Trail. This is what they just call their high performance cooler. It's a rotomolded cooler, and it's probably about as cheap as you'll find them. This one sells for 130 bucks. I have reason to believe they might not be making this anymore. I noticed it's sold out on their website, so I don't know what the deal is. Maybe it's discontinued. This little guy here is the Igloo BMX series cooler. This is a 52 quart version. It also has a list price of $130, about the same as that Ozark Trail. And don't worry, I'll go back and latch all these closed after I'm done. This is the Arctic Ultralight 52 quart cooler. That's what it looks like after 24 hours. This one is an injection molded cooler. This Arctic sells for about $200, but often goes on sale. This light gray one here is the Engel 60 quart Ultralight cooler, also an injection molded cooler, also 200 bucks. This is what it looks like after a day. Now we're jumping up in price point into the rotomolded coolers. This blue cooler is from Blue Coolers. This is a 60 quart, no wheels. It sells for $250 normally, but they run lots of promos. That's what it looks like after one day. Speaking of lots of promos, here's the other Arctic. Now the Arctic is calling their typical rotomolded coolers like this Ultra Tough coolers. So this is the Arctic Ultra Tough 65 quart. It is nearly a spitting image of the YETI Tundra. That's what it looks like after 24 hours. And the list price on that is also 250 bucks. So it is on this particular Lifetime. This is the Lifetime High Performance 65 quart cooler. So also the same size, roughly, at least by advertisement. Although the interior is always a little bit different on each of these. That's what it looks like after one day. This particular Lifetime sells for 250 bucks. You can get it for cheaper, quite a bit cheaper. I think around 180 or 190 if you find a Lifetime store near you. Lifetime also sells different sizes of the same cooler in Walmart and other retailers, usually for cheaper. So you can get a 55 quart or a 60 quart. They've got a lot of variations. Then we have this Cordova Base Camp series. This is their 48 quart cooler, and it sells for $260. So this one's a little bit smaller, but they only have a 48 quart, and then they jump up to an 80 quart in their next size. So this is the closest one to the YETI Tundra 65, and it's about $90 cheaper. Which brings us to the incumbent, the YETI Tundra 65 quart cooler, which sells for $350. This may just be the rotomolded cooler that made everybody else start making rotomolded coolers. And that's what the ice level looks like after one full day. Having started at the top here. Okay, it has been 72 hours since this little shindig began. Starting with the Coleman, here you go. Similar deal, but a lot more water is visible. I'm still giving all these coolers points for having cans on top, but I think they'll be bobbing tomorrow. Here's that Igloo. Here's that Ozark Trail. Here's the Igloo BMX. The Arctic Ultralight 52 quart, the Engel Ultralight. Here's the Blue Coolers Icefall. That one's still looking pretty good actually. The Arctic Ultra Tough, the 65 quart, the Lifetime High Performance. This one, the latches are on the bottom, not on the lid, which I kind of like. The Cordova Base Camp 48 quart. And then here's our incumbent. Here's the YETI Tundra. Still measures real cold on that lid actually. This one, it's very good insulation in the lid. Well, it has been 6 whole days, still hot, and we have some news, folks. Here we have our Coleman 316 series, and bada bing, bada boo-hoo, this thing is out of the race. No more ice in there. That lid is pretty warm. And even if we take this pin thermometer, you can see that temperature, that water is in the mid-40s, and so was the hot dog. So 0 points for that guy. It's out of the running. When we look at our Igloo Marine, we have a similar story. This one was a little colder, so I think this Igloo lasted a bit longer than that Coleman, but neither of these made it a full 6 days, so give it 5+. That's still pretty impressive given it has been so hot, and these coolers cost well under $100. And I didn't mention it earlier, but the Engel Ultralight was given to me by Engel to try out and test. No strings attached, so I can say what I want, just wanted to let you know. Here's the Lifetime High Performance ice, and same story on this one as the Engel. It was given to me to test out and try, as was this Cordova Base Camp, but I treat all the coolers the same, as you can see. Finally, we've got the YETI, still looking pretty good on ice as well. It has been 1 week, and I swear 7 days or 1 week is the great equalizer. And these little ice competitions I do with coolers, I've done enough of them now to see there's always something interesting that happens on day 7. Here's what we have left. Here is the Ozark Trail, rotomolded. Look at that, no more ice. This one is officially out. The Igloo BMX, Same story, just like the Ozark Trail, it went 6 full days and then some, but didn't quite make it to a full week. Here is the Arctic Ultralight, 52 quart, and look at that. Still an admirable showing of ice. Here is our Engel Ultralight. A little bit bigger capacity than the Arctic, by the way, but the same price. And this one too is out of ice. So here's the blue cooler. Look at that one. It's still doing pretty darn well. The blue is still in the running. G-Minis, going over a week. Here's the Arctic Ultra Tough. And this one is barely still in the game. Look at that. There's some ice now, a lot more water, and I doubt that's gonna probably even last through the night. Now let's take a look at the Lifetime High Performance. And this one too, my friends, is out of ice. But it's still fairly cold temperatures in there. And here's the Cordova Base Camp, our smallest cooler in this running, also out of ice. Now the real question, is the YETI still in the running? Drum roll, please. Oh, I mean, look, it is. That is ice, my friends, but barely. So it looks like the YETI is not going to be our winner, and at least some of these cheaper coolers are going to beat it when it comes to ice retention. Let's find out who it is. This time to do my observations, I'm going to do them with you. Let's see who made it. Starting with the Arctic Ultralight now. Oh my gosh, look at that. No more ice in that bad boy. I really thought this one was gonna make it another day. The Arctic Ultralight is out. Let's see who else. The blue cooler, blue ice vault. Look at that, folks. We still got ice there. Not too bad. We may have ourselves a winner. Let's check out the Arctic Ultra Tough. Dun dun dun, not surprised. Based on how that one looked yesterday. Look at that, yeah, we got a warm lid. I can guarantee you that hot dog is toasty warm as well. Yeah, okay. Arctic's out. Not surprised. Do you think there's any chance that one cube is still alive to defeat the blue? The YETI Tundra 65. Not a trace of ice, but according to my eye and my camera, and I am the judge in this, so we'll call that good. How about them apples? The YETI Tundra could not, in fact, beat all of the cheaper coolers. We know at least that blue ice vault has beat it. Today marks 9 days. All of the coolers are out, including the YETI, except for the blue cooler. So today, we're gonna see if it is still alive. So, you're seeing it real time with me. Blue cooler, is there ice? Dun dun dun. I believe we have reached an end to our competition. Thank goodness, man, this is taking too long. Let's go ahead and do our due diligence. I'm gonna check that temperature. Oh yeah, that's been melted for a little while yet. Hallelujah, game over. We can finally wrap this thing up. Let's look at the temperature charts. Here's a chart with all the coolers on it, and it looks a bit confusing because there's a lot going on, so let me try to break it down for you. The vertical lines represent 1 day at midnight. The horizontal lines represent temperature in degrees Fahrenheit in 5-degree increments. The YETI Tundra is the thick orange line in the chart. The peaks are when coolers got the hottest and were in direct sun right before the shade came back, and the valleys are the coolest part of the night, really in the early morning around 7 a.m. The lines end at the time when I observed there was no ice left, and that was the first day of 0 points. The ice actually ran out, though, sometime within the 24 hours previous to that point. That's why some of those lines are high, because they probably ran out of ice earlier than some of the others. I also use this data to break any ties among coolers that all ran out of ice on the same day. You can also see that the peaks on the 5th day weren't as high as a couple days before that, and that's because that day was overcast. It was cloudy, so the coolers weren't in direct sun. In this chart, you only see the lines for the Igloo and the Coleman. These are the first two that ran out of ice, and as you can see, the Igloo was still colder than the Coleman at the end, so it probably held on to ice just a hair longer. I attribute that mainly to the thickness of the lid and the insulation in it on the Igloo Marine, which is thicker than on the Coleman 316 series. And as you can see, the average temperature inside both of those coolers was quite a bit higher than that of the YETI throughout the whole test. Now we're going to look at the biggest cohort of finishers, those that lasted 6 full days. Looking at where the lines end from top to bottom, the Igloo BMX was the top, then Cordova, then Engel, then Ozark Trail, then the Lifetime is that little yellow one just above the orange YETI line at the bottom. And while the temperatures fluctuated on all of these coolers throughout the test, you can see that the Cordova and Engel seem to stay colder throughout, but the Lifetime did hold on a bit longer. Now we get to the coolers that lasted a full week. There are 3 coolers in this chart, and these are the ones that lasted 7 full days, but by the end of day 8, they were out of ice. That little red line above the thick orange YETI line is the Arctic Ultra Tough cooler, and clearly it ran out of ice just a bit before the YETI based on the temperatures alone. But it looks to me that that Arctic Ultra Light lasted about a half a day longer than the YETI Tundra or the Arctic Ultra Tough. And remember, that's a smaller cooler. So here are our top 3 podium finishers. The Blue Icefall is the clear winner with 8 full days of ice and then some, probably about 8.5 overall. It's the blue line that goes all the way to the right. Although it does look to have warmed up pretty rapidly once the sun hit it that morning. An interesting thing we can observe in this chart though, and it is apparent in all of these charts, is that the YETI tracks colder than all of them consistently. Now, I wasn't using fancy or calibrated thermometers or equipment, so it could be just an instrument error, but just anecdotally and even looking at it inside, I would say that probably rings true. The YETI seems to stay a bit colder than the others until it isn't. But there are also plenty of other variables that could affect this. Here's the final table that summarizes all the results. Feel free to pause your screen and study it a bit. The coolers are listed in finishing order from the ice challenge. As you can see on that YETI, the average internal temperature was 36.3 degrees, whereas the average internal temperature for all the other coolers was 38.4. And look at that price per day of ice column. This is a bit arbitrary, but it is kind of an indicator to me of the bang you're getting for your buck. The cheaper ones, of course, offer a lot of value, including that Coleman and Igloo, but the Blue and Arctic Ultralight are quite good as well, especially if you get them on sale for even cheaper. I do suspect a bigger Cordova base camp cooler would have lasted as long or longer than the YETI with ice, but even here it performed admirably. But I also want to warn you that you shouldn't expect these same results if you go and try to repeat this yourself in a real world scenario. I didn't pack a bunch of food and drinks in there. I only had a couple things in there for display. And I had all these coolers packed to the brim with ice, which is not typically how you're going to do it. You're probably going to have it half or maybe 2/3 full of ice and then some drinks and food. And while that gives you a lot of good thermal mass that in some cases may last even longer, it's probably not going to last as long. So in those same conditions in the real world, I'd probably cut those results in about half. It may do better than that, but I wouldn't expect 8 days even out of this blue cooler if it's that hot and I've got a bunch of food and drinks in there. In conclusion, the YETI isn't a bad cooler at all. That's not what this video is about. In fact, in all the ice challenges I've done, it consistently performs in the top half of all the coolers. But if you're looking to save some money, there are plenty of good alternatives. Even those cheap ones, the Coleman and Igloo, 5 days have ice out of that for a fraction of the price of a YETI. Not bad at all in my opinion. And then we found 5 coolers that were only a day shy in these conditions. In real world conditions, that might only turn out to be a half a day. Unfortunately, I haven't found any sub $100 coolers that can beat the YETI. Do you know of any? Let me know in the comments. But it appears this Arctic Ultralight will probably give you the best bang for your buck in terms of ice retention and price, especially if you find it on sale, at least out of this group of coolers. However, if you want the best performance, this Blue Icefall is the one. It will consistently beat the YETI every time, and you'll save $100 compared to the YETI Tundra in a similar size. Subscribe to the channel if you like gear tests like this, and subscribe to our email newsletter as well. Link in description below. Now, if you want to see the YETI up against a whole bunch more coolers, 38 of them to be precise, go check out this video next. Then gear up and get outside.